What's up YouTube, it's Dr. Zora helping cure you from being a noob. Today's video is all about finding the best crosshair settings that you should use in order to perform at your best in Valorant. We'll be covering multiple crosshair settings used by the pros that can allow you to rank up faster, crosshairs that will actually improve your aim, and crosshairs that you didn't even know existed and were possible to use. The last crosshair may surprise you. If this video helps you out, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what your crosshair settings are currently. Also make sure to follow me on Twitch and join our Discord for additional educational content that will greatly improve your play. All that is in the description. Enough with the hype, let's get into the video.
Die line with the boom pow. Every week now I switch to a new style. 212s in the back just blew out. Everything I do end up in a new style. Yeah, lead a club with a few now.
Coming in first, we have the dot crosshair that Scream most notably uses. If you guys aren't familiar with who Scream is, he's a former professional Counter-Strike player from Europe, and he was known as the headshot machine. The man was a beast and could land one-taps and headshots like they were nothing, and he's able to do the exact same in Valorant, winning multiple European tournaments and being one of the best players in the world currently. Back to the crosshair though, the dot crosshair is extremely versatile as it takes up the least amount of space on the screen, so you can fully focus on identifying the enemies and using your crosshair as more of an extension of your aim. Pro players use this crosshair because they've already mastered their aim and sensitivity, and as a result they don't need to rely on a crosshair to help them out as much as a normal player would. They can instead focus on seeing where the enemies are located and then directly aiming at them using their muscle memory rather than identifying the enemies and then taking that extra step to look at their crosshair before moving it. This crosshair isn't just for the pros though. Again, it takes up very little space, and the dot gives you that fine point of focus, which can be very helpful for players of all levels to aim with more precision. I found that players either love this crosshair or they hate it. Me personally, I'm in between with this crosshair and believe it's one that has a very niche population that it works with, but if you do fall into this category, it can take your aim to another level. To get this crosshair, all you have to do is turn all your inner and outer lines to 0, and from there turn on the center dot and then set outline capacity to 1 and outline thickness to 2, and voila, you have the dot crosshair. Give it a shot and let me know what you think. That being said, we're going to move on to another fantastic crosshair that you guys should definitely try out. Coming in hot, the second crosshair that you should definitely try from the pros is the small crosshair. This crosshair is probably my favorite one and the most popular amongst the pros. It's most notably used by professional player SKT1 Brax, as well as professional player from TSM Wardell. With your crosshair, you don't want something that's very large and distracting, and the small crosshair gives you that good point of focus without again taking up all that much space. Some players feel that the dot crosshair can be too specific. It's one dot that you have to try to get onto the enemy, and it feels like you have to work a little bit harder at times to get that accuracy. If you weren't a big fan of the dot crosshair, you'll definitely feel at home with the small crosshair. It's small compared to the other crosshairs, but when comparing it to the dot crosshair, it's actually quite large and gives you that extra freedom and leeway in your aim to get a kill onto the enemy. As an Immortal 1 player, this small crosshair fits just right in with not being too specific for me to try to aim with, while also not taking too much space on the screen, so I can appropriately balance between looking at the enemy players as well as aiming my crosshair onto them. I absolutely recommend that you guys try a small crosshair out, and to give you a couple of options to work with, my personal settings are having my inner lines set at an opacity of 1, a length of 6, thickness at 2, and then offset at 3. I absolutely love this crosshair. I've played around with it a few times. I've tried the dot, I've tried going smaller, trying to go bigger, but I just always ended up going back to these settings. So definitely give it a shot, but if you want more, we're going to go into the settings that Brax and Wardell use. So going into Brax, his inner lines are set at 1, 5, 2, 2, and Wardell's are actually set to the exact same settings. So make sure that you test this one out, as these settings are commonly used amongst the pros. Now we've gone through some of the biggest crosshairs used by the pros, and I'm going to show you the perfect crosshair in just a moment, but I want to take a moment to identify what all these crosshair settings have in common. Besides the dot crosshair, you'll notice that most players will only adjust their inner lines for their crosshair. Center dot will be turned off, movement error and firing error will be turned off, and outer lines will all be set to 0. The reason for this is for all the reasons we already stated. Professional players want crosshairs that are simple. They want crosshairs that don't take up too much of the screen and that aren't too distracting. Some people like it, but a center dot on an actual crosshair can add an additional distraction that can impact your aim. Likewise, movement error and firing error will result in your crosshair constantly moving as you navigate around the map or when you're firing at enemies, and this can be helpful when you're at the lower ranks and you're trying to learn the recoil patterns and when you're going to try to be accurate when shooting. But once you get the basics down, you want to turn these settings off to keep things at a minimalist level and allow you to stay more focused in game. Likewise, outer lines don't really assist you too much with aiming either, and they add another visual that you don't really need to worry about. It's unnecessary, pro players don't use it at all, and all you need is your inner lines to help you with your aiming and killing enemies. And one more thing before we go into some crazy crosshairs from the pros, we need to take a look at crosshair color. Many may think that the color doesn't really matter, but it does quite a bit. You want a color that sticks out from the enemies as well as the background on the maps. Are you starting to see a trend here? We want as little distractions as possible with the crosshair. If it blends with certain areas of the map, you'll have to spend additional time and additional brain cells to retrack where your crosshair is, and by that point, you're probably dead. To keep it as simple as possible, the most common color that pros will use is green. It sticks out from everything. It's the classic default color that most people are used to. It's effective, and as a result, you should try to use this crosshair. It's not for everyone though, and there are a few other colors that you can try if that's the case. The other two colors that I would recommend is cyan, which is most notably used by Shroud and by me as well as white, which is most notably used by, again, Brax from SKT1 and Wardell from Team Solo Mid. Alright, you guys have made it. We're now going to reveal the perfect professional crosshair settings that you should be using. These settings will definitely surprise you and are the settings used by professional player Hiko, who has recently signed for 100 Thieves. If you've watched Hiko's streams, you may have seen him playing around with his crosshair before. He's used the dot, he's changed the crosshair colors, and he's used multiple variations of the small crosshair. And that's actually the point I have to make here. Plot twist, there is no perfect crosshair in Valorant. Wait, Dr. Zora, what do you mean? What, Nani? Yes, there's no crosshair that you can really say is perfect. Otherwise, you'd see all the pros using the exact same settings, but you don't. Pro players use a variety of different crosshair settings, and as long as you follow the foundational concepts, you can make multiple different crosshairs that will work and feel comfortable to use. I like to use Hiko here as an example because he's recently been changing his crosshair quite often, almost weekly I have to say, and guess what? It didn't make a difference to his aim at all. He gets just as many headshots and just as many kills with every crosshair he tries, because despite changing his crosshair so much, he keeps his settings within the foundational principles to ensure he plays as well as he is capable of. So what are these foundational principles that you might be asking about? Well, to be honest, we've already gone through them throughout this video, but in case you missed them, we're going to summarize it right now. First off, you want to keep it simple. Don't go too fancy into your settings. Most professionals don't even touch a single thing besides the inner lines and the crosshair color. These are the settings that are most important, and unless you're using the dot crosshair, you don't really need to be touching anything else. Mess around with the inner lines and the colors until you find something that feels good to you. Following that up, use a static crosshair. Again, beginners should always use a dynamic crosshair first with movement error and firing error turned on, but once you get a sense of when you're going to be accurate, you want to turn this off to eliminate distractions and additional movements that you don't need to be shown on the screen so you can focus more on aiming at enemy heads. Third, use a small crosshair. We've given you some settings already at the beginning of the video, but you can always make little tweaks just as the pros do to fit to your liking, as long as you keep the crosshair small to clear up the screen, eliminate clutter, and allow you to focus on finding enemies rather than trying to find your crosshair or having your crosshair block your view of the enemy. Lastly, make sure the crosshair is visible to you, and again, the crosshairs that many of the pros use are green, cyan, and white. So now you know the principles that every pro player follows to make their crosshair. You can go ahead and make your own crosshair to your liking. But if you need some more inspiration, you can go over to prosettings.net, go into players and click on Valorant, and this will bring up all the crosshair settings that the pro players are using. You have Shroud, you have Mixwell, you have Hiko. You can click on any of these players and then you'll get their settings, and you'll see again as you scroll through these players that they follow the same concepts. You see a white color here, that's one of the 3 that I mentioned, and then the inner lines are pretty small, 1, 2, 2, 4. And if we go back to other players, we can also look at another player like Tens, for example, and you can see the same concept applies. He uses the cyan color, again one of those 3 that we mentioned, and then inner lines 1, 4, 2, 2, which again falls into that small crosshair category. That's all I have for this video. If it helped you out, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment down below on what crosshair settings you're currently using. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitch and join our Discord community for additional educational content, or else I will slap you in the face. I'm Dr. Zora, helping cure you from being a noob, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.